Good morning, everyone. Today is going to be in kind of a nice intro level joint mobility class. So real quick, want to go over the rules of pain. And I want to get into a little bit of a different layer of the rules of pain. So first thing, pain is binary. So you're either in pain or you're not in pain. It's either a yes or a no. I want to consider slight discomfort, soreness, achiness as levels of pain. If we have pain as a yes, bringing into the class, then I want to have a different criteria for how we are moving with that pain being present. So pain yes, we're going to put it on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being not painful, 10 being excruciating, worst pain imaginable. I don't want any movement that takes us into a pain level of a 3 or above. I want it to stay below the level 3. If you're feeling 3, you're in a state too high. I want to remove that state by softening, not moving quite as far, making your movements smaller and more manageable. And I want to bring this into context with scarring, like a recent surgery or a recent injury where we may have an incision that is inside of a 6-week window of tissue healing. I want to be incredibly mild around that scar. It's okay to get a little bit of a stretch, but if you're feeling stretch, that means it is mild. I don't want to go into anything beyond just feeling the sensation of stretch around that area, at least until that scar tissue has had a chance to, or that scar has had a chance to mend fully, at which point we might change that strategy just a little bit, in which case I would recommend scheduling a consultation so that we can chat about it. So with all that, let's get started. We're going to start on our back, going into our crocodile breathing. So we're going to make a nice big C shapes with our hands. Thumbs are going to go around the low back. I want to feel the thumbs pressing into your back, low back, kind of getting as much into those erector muscles of the lumbar spine. Side palm is pressing into the side body, getting a little bit of a pressure into that side body space. And then the index fingers are pressing into the abdominals. And I want to kind of get a nice clamping feel around that midsection so that as we inhale, we're expanding into all 6 of those points of pressure, breathing forward into the abdominals, out through the side body and into the low back. We're breathing in like we're trying to inflate a balloon. We're going to get nice deep breaths in through the nose. Feel that expansion. And as you exhale, out through the mouth, drawing the navel up and in towards the spine. And as you exhale, allow those hands to squeeze just a little bit so that you can give yourself a little bit more resistance for your inhale to expand into. And let's get a good 5 to 6 to 10 breaths. Full inhale, full exhale. As you exhale and squeeze, let that next inhale expand out as much as you can, filling up that space. See if you can get a mild stretch through the abdominals. Can you feel it, especially in that side space or in the posterior back space on your inhale? And when you're going through these breaths, notice if it's harder to breathe out through the side and into that low back. More than likely, that breath wants to go forward into your abdominals. That's normal. It may feel more difficult to breathe out through the side and into the low back. And more importantly, is it more difficult to breathe into the right side or into the left side? And for right now, I just kind of want to take note of that as we get finished through our breaths. We're going to slowly roll over onto our side, come up into a quadruped position, getting into hands and knees. We're going to spread fingers nice and wide, rounding palms, extending elbows fully without locking. We're going to get into some light wrist mobility. I want to feel well grounded through the entire hand, spreading the hand out as much as possible. And we're just going to lightly rock into that wrist space and rock right back out. We're loading up the wrists lightly, not painfully. Exhale as we move forward. Inhale as we soften into hips to heels. I want to go slow, so sinking it into our breath. And I want to continue with that crocodile breath through this movement and really throughout the class. Continue to try to breathe, expanding that abdominal area like a balloon in all directions. And we're doing a good 5 to 10 reps on each position of our wrist. Next, we'll turn our fingers out to the side, and we'll start to move side to side. On this, I want to feel that nice push-pull effect through the palms. As I'm moving away from my hand, I'm pushing that palm away. As I'm moving towards the palm, I'm pulling that palm in. And feel how that creates action at the shoulder blade. I want to feel the action of that push away, feel that shoulder blade pushing off the shelf of the rib cage. As you're pulling into it, feel that shoulder blade pulling in towards your spine. See how much you can feel that connection from palm up to the shoulder blade. Feel that action throughout the arm up into the shoulder. Inhale is going to be as you're coming to center. Exhale as you reach to the side. Inhaling back to center and exhaling to the other side. Then we're going to turn fingers all the way back towards the knees. The closer the hands are, the less intense this is. So I want the further out we come, the more intense. I want to keep this light and soft. Palms are grounded. We're going to lightly rock back hips to heels so that you feel that load through the front of the forearm space. Inhale as you come forward. Exhale as you soften back. Notice the difference of the right wrist compared to the left wrist. Notice the difference of how does a stretch feel in the forearm on the right side, in the left side. And let's notice how the shoulder blades feel left side to right side. Next, we're going to flip the palms upside down and allow the elbows to bend. We're going to press down into the floor lightly to extend the elbows as much as we can without pain. First thing I want to feel is if there's a stretch in that elbow space. If there is, then that's what I want to play with. I want to play with that light sensation of stretch moving into it, seeing how much can we extend the elbows without going into a major stretch or a significant stretch. I want to stay in the mild space of it, and then allow the elbows to bend. Exhale as you press, inhale as you soften. If you're able to get full extension of the elbows without this feeling of a stretch or without pain, then we can do a little bit of rocking back hips to heels. Again, keeping that wrist loaded to the floor. And just feel that nice, gentle mobility action at the wrist, in the wrist space itself. We'll flip the palms back over, coming back to grounded palms. Now I want to play a little bit with spirals of the elbow. And real quick, if you need to take breaks to come off the wrist throughout these kind of movements, roll the wrists out, get a little flow back into them. I don't want to overly stress the wrists. So palms grounded, elbows extended. We're getting into our spirals through the elbows, letting those elbow pits spiral forward and then spiral backwards. I want to come back to feeling that grounded nature of the palm, especially as those elbow pits spiral forward. Notice how the palm really flattens out onto the floor. And then as the elbows spiral inward, the palms kind of soften just a little bit from the floor. And then I want to connect that palm action to the shoulder blades. As the elbow pits are spiraling forward, feel your shoulder blade spiral downward on your rib cage and get kind of tight, like it's locking into your ribs. And then as your elbow pits spiral internally, allow the shoulder blades to softly round up over their shoulders. So they're reaching down, packing down into the ribs as you spiral elbows forward. As you spiral them internally, shoulder blades are softening and rounding over the tops of the rib cage. And really kind of see how much can you accentuate that movement through the shoulders and the palms in both directions. Start to really press as you internally spiral. See if you can feel a nice stretch in between the shoulder blades and the spine as your elbow pits are going inward. And then as your elbow pits are spiraling out, can you really feel the shoulder blades pack down and back and really hug that rib cage? Then we'll come off the wrists. Again, give them a little bit of a break, give them some flow. We're going to spend a little bit more time on them here. Now we're staying in our quadruped, but we're going to get our focus into our feet, tucking the big toes. I want that big toe tucked as much as you possibly can without pain, and have the heels turned in towards each other as much as you can. And from here, we're going to load that big toe joint space by just allowing the hips to softly sink back to the heels and then coming forward. We're exhaling, drawing navel into spine as we sink into our hips. We're inhaling, filling up that balloon or crocodile breath as we move forward. Continue to kind of check into the wrist space to make sure that we're not overloading them and giving them a little bit of break and rest as we need to. But for now, I kind of want to get in, feel that big toe joint. Notice the right big toe compared to the left big toe. More than likely, there's a difference in how much mobility you have between them. Can you sense that difference? Can you feel one side is a little tighter, a little more restricted? Maybe it has a little less range of motion to it. As you're moving into each one, can you feel that restriction soften up? And can you feel a little bit more balance between the two? I don't want to force it, but I do want to develop a good sensitivity to it. Then we're going to turn our heels out as far as we can, seeing if we can get tucked underneath all the way out to the pinky toe. You may have difficulty getting that pinky toe tucked in. Let the heels roll out as much as possible. And we're going to come right back into softly rocking back hips to heels. Inhaling as we come forward, exhaling as we allow our hips to sink back to the heels. Again, notice the difference on the right side compared to the left side. Is one side stiffer, more restricted? Is it painful? Again, remember, I want to pay attention to even slight discomfort or soreness as a level of pain. I want to really develop that sensitivity because I need to know when my body is in pain. It doesn't mean I'm not going to move into it, but I want to develop that sensitivity for an awareness of it. On the next one, as we sink back, I want to come into a point of light tension, but not maximum tension. And from here, we're going to do some windshield wipers through the heels, moving all the way in towards the big toe and then rolling all the way back out to the pinky toe. And feel that nice all that mobility taking place as we kind of move from big toe to pinky toe, and how that changes the stretch through the arch of the foot from the medial arch out to the lateral arch. And again, notice any kind of differences in tension and stretch between the right side and the left side. Is one side a little clunky? Is it not as smooth? Is there a pretty significant stretch at some point. Then we're going to let our ankles go nice and flat, and we're going to come right back to hips to heels, sinking back, allowing the hips to come back as much as they can without going into pain. I want to watch out for pain in the knees, and I want to watch out for pain at the ankles. Inhale as you're coming forward. Exhale, drawing hips, belly to spine, and as you go hips to heels. And I want to kind of feel into this front of the ankle space. If you're able to get your hips all the way back to the heels without pain, then we can kind of walk our body up to load a little bit more weight into the hips, and then walking it all the way back out. Again, I want to kind of feel into the front of the ankles. How does the right ankle feel compared to the left ankle? Do they both go flat to the floor, or is there a little bit of space underneath one? Does one side feel tight and restricted and unable to move as much? I don't want to force it, but I do want to, again, create sensitivity to it and create some awareness of it. We're going to come back up into our just regular quadruped, spread fingers, and I want to go ahead and tuck the toes with the heels perpendicular to each other, or parallel to each other, straight up and down. Heels are directly up to the floor or to the ceiling. I want to feel that big toe nicely loaded, tucked underneath as much as possible. We're going to get into a little bit of our pelvic mobility, into some cat-cow work. Coming back into our crocodile breath. Inhale, inflate that belly space fully. On the exhale, drawing navel into spine. As you inhale, because of the position we're in, that breath is going to more easily move into the abdominals. So we're going to allow that to happen and allow that pelvis to tilt down towards the floor, and see how much of a stretch can you feel through the abdominals on that inhale. And then as you exhale, scooping the pelvis, drawing that navel in. But I only want to allow that movement to go up to my 12th rib. I'm not getting an arch through my upper back. I want to maintain some fixed position through the upper back. I'm only doing some pelvic tilts, scooping into it. See if you can feel this stretch drawn out into the lower back. On that exhale, inhale, let that belly open up to the floor as much as possible without getting any kind of pinch or pain in the low back. If you have some discomfort with one direction, whether it's the scoop or your belly opening up to the floor, be incredibly slow with that. I don't want to move into that quickly, and I don't want to push it. I want to stay in that light, mild stretch area with this. Little bit of movement is going to go a long way over time. We don't need to force it. And now I want to start to bring this up through more of the spine. So as you scoop, we're going to allow that movement now to start to slowly move up the rest of the spine. We're continuing to scoop from the pelvis. As it gets up to the shoulders, we're going to press into the palms, reach through the floor, and allow that stretch, that movement to go over the top of the head, so that we're now trying to touch our tailbone to our forehead at this imaginary point in the middle on that full exhale. And then as we inhale, allowing that pelvis to open up down towards the floor, filling up that belly space. As it moves up the spine and comes to the chest, the sternum's reaching down to the floor, and the head is coming up last. Exhale as you scoop. Feel that movement move up the spine like a wave as we press through the floor. Inhale, fill up that belly space as you feel that wave of movement move up the spine. Sternum reaches down and the head comes up last. As we're doing this, I now want to add in our arm spirals that we did just a moment ago. As you're inhaling, belly's opening up to the floor, where I want the elbow pits to spiral forward so that you feel the shoulder blades spiraling down the rib cage, packing on the ribs as your head comes up last. As you exhale, scoop, we're spiraling the elbow pits inwardly, feeling the shoulder blades roll over the top of the shoulder blades as we try to touch tailbone to forehead. If this is not painful and if you don't have any kind of scar tissue, I want to see how big of a stretch can we feel in both directions. As we're in this nice cow position, feeling those shoulders packed down and back. Feel that opening through the abdominal space. As we exhale, drawing navel to spine and spiraling arms out, can you feel that big stretch from the low back all the way across the upper back into the shoulders? Big stretch being broad, covering lots of space, not big stretch being intense. And we'll go ahead and take come back to our normal resting neutral position. And now we're going to bring our hands forward, getting our nice sticky gecko-like hands. I want to make sure we have downward pressure through the hands and the elbows are active. I want to think like a gecko. I don't want my hands sliding out because I'm not grounded fully through the floor. The more spread that hand is and the downward pressing we have, we're going to feel that pressure through the palm. I also want to feel that engagement through the shoulder blades on the upper back. From here, I want to do a little bit of pelvic tilt from this position. My arms are kind of out and extended. I want to try to keep my hips as much as I can over my knees. Inhale into that belly space, allowing the pelvis to tilt forward towards the floor. Exhale, draw navel into spine and scoop that pelvis. Again, this is only going to move up to the rib cage, largely because of the position of our hands. We're not going to get as much movement up into the upper thoracic. I want to feel that nice exhale, drawing that navel in and scoop. And feel how that kind of engages your core, especially as you scoop. Notice how that creates tension in that abdominal space. On the next inhale, as you exhale, I want to maintain that position of your pelvis. We're going to keep that scooped nature. That's going to keep that core lightly engaged. From here, we're exhaling as we reach the sternum down towards the floor, but try to maintain that scooped pelvis. Inhale as you come back up. Exhale as you reach your sternum to the floor. Again, I want to have fairly actively downward pressing hands and engaged shoulder blades. I want to feel this action of stability through the palms of the hands and shoulders as we're reaching our sternum to the floor and as we're coming back out. Notice if one hand feels a little shaky, if one shoulder feels a little less stable. I want to make sure that we are not moving into an intense level of pain. So make sure that if this is uncomfortable, that we're staying within that low level 1 or 2 on the pain scale. And then we're going to come off our shoulders and we're going to come into an inverted position or a reverse sit. Legs are in front, knees are bent, hands are coming down to the side of our hips. If you find that you got a longer torso than you do arms and it's hard to reach the floor, it's okay for your hands to come back a little bit. However, I want to try to keep our hands as close to the hips as possible. I don't want to get super far lean back here. I want to try to maintain as much of a straight up and down spine as possible. Position of the fingers can be forward, out to the side, or back, whatever is comfortable. I tend to go straight out to the side. I kind of like playing with different positions at different times on this. Grounding through the floor, I want to come back to our elbow spirals. Let those elbows spiral outward and then allowing them to spiral inward. As you're spiraling out, we're inhaling into that belly space, filling up our crocodile breath. And as we exhale, drawing navel into spine as the elbows spiral in. Notice how that same connection is taking place between the palm and the shoulder blade based on the spiraling of our elbows. As the elbows are spiraling out, shoulder blades are rolling down and packing down the back, moving down on our rib cage. Chest is opening up and lifting up towards the ceiling. As we exhale, internally spiral, that releases the shoulders and they start to round up over the top of the rib cage. I also want to add in our scoop so that we're getting that pelvic scoop from our exhale so that we get this nice rounded low back and upper back together. Inhale as you spiral elbows out. Start to move into that nice opening of the chest. Can you feel some stretch across the chest? Can you feel your shoulder blades really engaging down into the palms of your hands as you press into the floor? And can you feel that nice softening, rounding? Can you get a decent little stretch through both the low back and between the shoulder blades as you exhale and scoop? On the next one, as you inhale, spiraling elbows out, getting nice and tall, I want to stay in this position. Open chest, elbows spiraled out. We can now change the position of our feet if you want to cross them or if you want to let them go straight, as long as we're maintaining this downward press, open chest. I want to stay real engaged through the shoulders as we get into some neck mobility work. So from this position, part of the reason I want to keep the shoulders depressed and active is I don't want the shoulders to shrug up as we're getting into our neck work, because that kind of takes away from our neck mobility. So active shoulders kind of free up our neck so that we can get in some good neck work. Staying nice and open through the chest and as tall as you can through the back of the head up to the ceiling on a nice tall spine. We're going to start with just simply checking our blind spots. Looking over your right shoulder as we exhale, squeezing slowly into it on that exhale. Inhaling into our crocodile breath back to center, and then exhale to the other side. I want to keep this movement slow with each full breath cycle. I don't want to move into this quickly. As you're reaching, I want to reach more from the chin than from the forehead. Forehead tends to cause the head to tilt as we're reaching and we lose our tall spine. So I want to keep that tall spine, reach that chin to see how far can you get your chin to line up to the edge of your shoulder. Inhale to the middle, exhale as you reach. Notice, can you get your chin as far over the right shoulder as you can on your left shoulder? More than likely, there's going to be a little bit of an imbalance. That's fairly normal. I want to get sensitive to that imbalance. There's going to be some differences in tightness and restriction of the neck based on how you move to the right compared to how you move to the left. If you can see the difference on how far you can get your chin, can you feel the difference in tension and stretch taking place within the neck region? Outside of just noticing it for right now, that's all I want to do with that information, is just have an awareness of it. We'll come back to center, and now we're going to get into our light kind of windshield wipers. Lightly dropping one ear towards the shoulder. I'm not trying to touch my shoulder, it's just a light drop. And then opposite ear, I'm lifting that ear up like I'm trying to reach to the ceiling, seeing if we can get some nice traction through the side of the neck. And then bringing it back to center, dropping the other ear and reaching ear up to ceiling. Want to inhale as we come to center and exhale as we reach up and away. This is a good one to kind of come back and re-engage through the palms as well, especially as you lift. Press down through the palms, feel the shoulder blades drive down as you're lifting that ear up. Again, I want to stay light and juicy in this. I don't want this to be massive as a stretch. I definitely don't want this to be painful. I want to be extra sensitive around movement of the neck. And again, let's come back to noticing that differences in one side compared to the other. How is this, where is it tight and restricted? Do you feel one side moves a little bit better than the other side? These are actually really good movements to do in front of a mirror so that you can visually see the differences between one side and the other, because that will help develop that nature of sensitivity so that you can feel where the tightness is actually taking place within the body. We'll come back to our starting, and now we're going to get into some glides, allowing the head to slide side to side, reaching the cheek across like you're trying to reach out to your shoulder, and then going back to the other side. Again, I want to reach from that cheekbone and maybe a little bit from that chin, because I want to avoid that tilt of the head, and I want to watch out for rotation, turning the head towards. I want to keep the head straight as we're gliding side to side. Again, keeping those shoulders packed down and back so that the shoulders are actively pressed down as we're moving side to side. And slowly squeeze into it on that exhale. Inhale as you come back, exhale as you slowly squeeze. Again, this one's a great one to do in front of a mirror so that you can see how well do I move from one side compared to the other. Any kind of imbalances on these movements tends to be a pretty significant issue or deal, because it's going to affect other areas of the body as well. And I want to add another, actually we'll combine this. We're going to do some forward glides now. So I'm turning to the side. We're still pressed down through the shoulders. Now we're reaching forward with the chin, seeing how far can you reach your chin out, and then pulling the chin back, sliding as far back as you can. Tucking that chin in deep, and then reaching straight out. I don't want to tilt the head. I'm not extending my head up towards the ceiling. I'm reaching the chin straight forward. Same thing on the pulling back. I don't want to drop my chin to the chest. I'm simply tucking that chin, pulling it in as deep as I can comfortably, and then gliding straight out. Inhale as you pull, exhale as you reach. And then I want to combine those two, our side to side glide and our forward and backward side, and I want to turn that into a circle. So we can start by reaching that chin straight out to the side, and then reaching our ear or our cheekbone across, and then pulling our chin in, going back across to the other side, and then reaching out and forward, making a nice circular pattern with our glide. Inhale as you pull back, exhale as you reach that chin out. Notice any crackly, any crunchiness, any, definitely want to pay attention to pain. If you're feeling any kind of discomfort with this, then I want you to back off, make the movement smaller, keep it comfortable and not painful. After about 5 to 10, we're going to reverse directions, going the opposite direction, keeping it nice and smooth and small and non-painful. And again, notice if it's more difficult to move in one direction of your circle compared to the other direction. I'm having a little bit more difficulty moving across to the right side. That was not there when I was going the other direction. And the last one we're going to do are some shallow neck rolls. And so by shallow, I want to stay small. I don't want to get real deep. We're going to start by simply allowing the chin to come down to the chest, like we're looking down to the floor. Then we're going to move our ear to the shoulder, and then allow our gaze to come up to the ceiling, and then opposite ear to the opposite shoulder, and chin back down to chest. So we got 4 points of contact, or 4 points that we're moving to. That makes a square. I want to keep moving through them and slowly smooth it out to make it more of a circle. Again, I want to stay shallow with this because I want to avoid pain, and I want to really notice the areas in which my shoulders want to get engaged. So let's re-engage our shoulders, pressing through the palms, elbows are spiraled out, lifting up through the chest. You may notice that that creates even more tightness and tension in the neck itself. So keep that roll nice and shallow. Notice where the tension is greater. Is it on the right side of the neck or is it on the left side of the neck? And then we're going to reverse directions. As we reverse directions, we're coming back to shallow again. I don't want to go from the depth that we were just at. And we're going to start with our 4 points. Chin to chest, shallow ear to shoulder, eyes come up to the ceiling, and then ear to the opposite shoulder, chin to chest. And then from there, we're slowly going to smooth those 4 points into a circle and slowly get a little deeper on our roll, as long as it does not get to levels of intense or pain. And again, notice where it feels more tension, more stretch. And I also want to pay attention to any of that like crackly or clunky nature. I want to stay as smooth as possible. If you have some crackly on this, as long as it is not painful, I want to go through it softly, slowly, smoothly, and I want to think about kind of we're de-crackling the crackle. Then we're going to get off our hands a little bit, and we're going to come into a nice wide V-sit. Opening up the legs as wide as you comfortably can. Hands can come back behind the hips in order to support. We're still kind of grounding through the palms, keeping the chest nice and open, and elbows are slightly externally rotated so that the elbow pits are facing more forward. I don't need to be super stressed in the shoulders. I just simply want to have some nice support to try to keep the spine upright. Actively straighten the knees as if you're trying to reach your knees down into the floor, and actively pull the tops of your feet back like you're trying to fold them back to your shins. And from here, we're going to do some spirals through the knees, opening up those knees, rolling them out as wide as you can, and then internally spiraling the knees inside as far as you can. I want to feel this deep up into the hip socket, that spiral out. Can you feel that stretch opening up through that inside of the hip? And then as you spiral in, can you also feel that deep into the hip? And with each one, we're exhaling as we get to the end range. As I roll out, I exhale, squeeze. Inhale as the feet come up to center, and as they turn in, exhale and squeeze. With each one, I'm seeing if I can go a little further without forcing it and without going into a massive stretch and without going into pain. And this is a good one to really look at your kneecaps and see, when you spiral inward, does one kneecap go further? When you go outward, when you spiral out, does one kneecap go further? Keep those knees actively reaching to the floor, actively pulling the dorsum of the foot back. I want to keep the knees active, and now we're going to get into a nice little flossing action of the ankles. So as you spiral the knees out, then you can point your toes, then spiral the knees in and pull the toes back towards the shin, making a nice circle. I want to avoid any kind of like crampy nature in the arch of the foot. So if you're feeling that, then kind of back off the movement. If not, if this is feeling good, we can actually add a little bit more to it by, as you point, you can flex the toes, gripping them and reaching through them as you open up the front of the ankle space. And then as you pull back, really pull the toes and spread them out as wide as you possibly can. And then back as you point, flex, grip. Notice how much of a flossing stretch you feel through that ankle space as you're moving through that big circle. And after a good number in one direction, we're then going to reverse directions. Keep the knees actively reaching to the floor. Try to keep those knees, the legs spread out as wide as you can. You may notice that they want to come in a little bit as you're going through this. And once you've gotten an even number of reps in both directions, we're going to come back to actively pulling the tops of the feet back. And now we're going to release the hands if we can, and we're going to see if we can get a little bit of forward fold. So I want to stay actively reaching down through the knees, actively pulling the dorsum of the feet back. Nice inhale into our crocodile breath. Exhale as you draw the navel to the spine, and we're going to slowly reach our hands forward. Inhale, we're letting our hands come all the way back, getting tall. Filling up that belly space. Exhale, drawing navel in, and slowly seeing if we can reach a little further. I like to think of the hands as the waves moving up a beach. On that exhale, receding back on the inhale. Notice how that feels through the back line of the legs, behind the knees, and down into the calves. Does one side feel a little tighter and more restricted than the other side? Again, I want to develop sensitivity to notice the differences, how this feels right side to left side. And then we're going to start to get a little bit of movement side to side, reaching a little bit more towards the right, and then reaching a little bit more towards the left. Try to keep your hands even. I want to keep my reaching fingers so that they remain square on my reach. If I'm turning to the side, I want to turn my shoulders so that my hands continue to stay even on that reach. We can even start to reach all the way out to the heels with the hands on either side of the legs. And again, how does this feel on the right side compared to the left side? Do you notice that your fingers can go farther on one side than they do on the other? And let's open up our sensitivity to not just the back of the leg, but also noticing a little bit in the low back. You get some stretch in one direction that's greater through that low back area than you do on the other side. And this will be something interesting to notice. Do you feel a bigger stretch on one hamstring, but less stretch in your low back so that you're actually able to go a little farther on one side? And on the other side, do you feel less stretch on the hamstring? You can't go as far and you feel a greater stretch in the low back. That's going to be really interesting information to kind of derive, and will be real useful in a consultation session, because that's going to tell me some things that we want to work on. Now we're going to let our knees bend, coming back into our inverted position. Hands can come to the floor and support. We don't need to ground real deeply on this. I want the feet to be fairly spread wide. And we're going to do some windshield wipers, just allowing the knees to roll to one side and seeing how far can you get your knees to the floor without pain at the knees or in the hips or in the back. Inhale into our crocodile breath as we bring our knees back to center. Exhale, drawing navel to spine as we're seeing if we can get our knees to the floor. If you have discomfort in the knees, and you cannot get your knees to the floor, then this is as far as you're going to go in the shin box series right now. This is your work. Slowly, and this is something I would suggest doing frequently throughout the day. until you have greater range of motion and you can get both knees to the floor. You're not going to be able to get to the next level of any of these movements, and I don't want to force it. If you're able to get knees to the floor as you come in, allow that back hand to come up off the floor. You can keep the outside hand engaged. And then as we come back across, switching hands to the other side. And now we're going to get into a little bit of anterior hip. So as I come, and we're going to still go side to side with this. I'm going to break it down just a little bit. So inside of my back knee is a pivot point that I want to press into that point, and my hip, I want to feel my hip move and roll over the top of the other hip. This hip has to come up off the ground. So as it rolls over the top, we're feeling into this nice stretch through the front of the hip. As you soften and release, we're bringing our hands down and we're windshield wiping across to the other side. And we're doing the same thing. Pivoting into the inside of that knee, hip rolls over the top. I want to reach into that pivot point and feel that light stretch through the front of the hip. We're going back and forth, side to side on this. Feel that nice opening stretch through the front of the hip. Exhale as you reach. Inhale as you come to center. You can take another breath in between as you go to the other side, so that as you're coming knee down, we're on our exhale, pivoting through that knee, drawing navel into spine. As you're getting that exhale and reaching with the hip, I want to kind of scoop the tailbone into it as well. The more you're able to scoop into it, the more you're going to draw that stretch out through the front. Notice the difference of the right side compared to the left side. You can look visually. Can you get as much extension of the hip? Can you get this area of the hip straight, or is it a little bit bent, especially comparatively to the other side? Does one side feel tighter and more restricted? As you're getting into that full reach, squeezing into it, can you start to feel your glute tighten up in the back? Does that feel different on the left side compared to the right side? Now we're going to add another layer to this. As we come to the side, reaching through that knee, opening that hip forward, now we're going to get into a little bit of forward fold. I want to fold towards the arrow of the knee. So I'm reaching both hands through that knee, keeping this back hip actively pressed forward and seeing if we can slowly reach both hands evenly on that exhale. Inhale, we're bringing it all the way up, windshield wiping across to the other side, pivoting through the knee, opening the front of that back hip, and then reaching both hands evenly through the knee on the exhale. Inhale, bringing it all the way back. Again, add a breath cycle. Inhale as you come across, exhale. Inhale as you extend that back hip, exhale as you reach. Notice how does this feel as you fold to the right compared to the left? Are you able to reach as far? Do you feel a greater stretch in the glutes, on the front, on the back glute of the leg in front on one side than you do on the other side? Do you feel this in your low back more on one side than the other side? Again, I want to stay in that nice and gentle state with this. If this is feeling good and you're ready to add a little bit more, as we come into our shin box, I want to start to open up that back hip, make it wider. And I'm less concerned about following the knee as the arrow, and I just want to get into a nice fold, feeling into that space, continuing to follow our breath as we're cycling through from one side to the other. Open that back knee up a little bit more. How does this feel on one side compared to the other? The more we open up that back hip, the more we're going to expose any kind of immobility in the hip that might be different on one side to the other. So I want to notice, does it feel different as I get into the same position on one side compared to the other side? And where does it feel different? At what point in my movement does it feel different? Also notice that this just feels kind of good and juicy, and as we're getting into it a few times, it kind of opens up space and we're able to get a little further into it on each one. It's the reason I don't want to be forceful. We don't have to force the improvement in the movement. The more that we move the body in non-painful ways, it just kind of naturally gives us a little bit more access as we go. We're going to continue to open up that back leg until we get more and more into what we would consider a yoga class pigeon pose. Seeing how far can you reach that back knee, and then reach the hands forward. I am not super concerned about getting into a full-on like yoga class pigeon pose. I'm not as concerned about the end range right now. I'm more concerned with the exploration in between. How does it feel different as you're moving into the right side compared to the left side? Where is the stretch greater? Where is it less mobile? Where are you having trouble getting into? We're going to come back to our starting point with shin box. I want to continue to kind of reach and pivot through this back hip, reaching it forward. And now we're going to bring our arm, our support arm up off the floor if we can. If you cannot get off this arm on one side or the other, then at this point I would say take a break from this part of the movement. And this would be a good place to come and contact me, and we'll talk about how we can get this next phase into your body. If you're able to get off that hand, we're bringing that arm up and elbow up, and we're going to bend the elbow so that the hand is going across the top of the head. And I want to reach with the elbow like we're trying to touch the ceiling as we exhale. Inhale, we're letting that elbow soften as we fill up our crocodile breath. Exhale, drawing navel into spine, reaching that elbow up towards the ceiling. I want to continue to have this back hip also sliding forward on that exhale. So as we exhale, back hip is reaching forward, drawing navel in as we're reaching up towards the ceiling lightly. Inhale, let the elbow soften and the hip soften. Exhale, back hip slides forward, elbow reaches up and lifts to the ceiling. And then let's windshield wiper across so that we can get started on that on the other side. So again, pivot through that back knee, sliding that hip forward, elbows up, exhale, reaching up, lifting to the ceiling. Inhale, allowing the hip to soften and the elbow to soften, filling up our crocodile breath. Exhale, drawing navel to spine, hip slides forward, elbow reaches up tall. Once you feel that grooved into the body with a few breaths, now I want to come back to our flow going back and forth, moving all the way across. Exhale, hip reaches forward, reach that elbow up as high as you can without going to discomfort. On that exhale, inhale, bringing it all back to center. Coming across to the other side, exhale, reach that hip and reach the elbow up. Now we can start to compare. How does this feel as you reach through that movement up on the right side compared to reaching on the left side? There's going to be a lot of places where we want to develop some sensitivity on this. Can you feel it on that front of the back hip more on the right side or the left? Do you feel this more in your low back space on the right side compared to the left? You feel it's difficult to even get that arm up. Your arm wants to stay down. And then can you feel that in that kind of armpit area, the posterior shoulder, more on the right side than the left side? I want to get some good sensitivity to those, any kind of potential imbalances between one side and the other. And we'll come back to our starting point, and now we're going to get onto our back. And I want to get back into our nice breaths into the belly. As we breathe in, the belly is opening up towards the ceiling. We're getting a nice big sway in our low back. On the exhale, we're drawing our navel into the spine, feeling that slight scoop of the pelvis, but without putting a lot of any pressure through our feet. Inhale. I'm still breathing into my crocodile breath, but since I'm allowing the pelvis to tilt forward, that breath is going to move a lot more into the abdominal space. And then on the exhale, drawing that navel into the spine, that's going to flatten the back. I'm using my belly button to press my back, my spine towards the floor without using my legs a whole lot. Really want to feel that scooping action happening from the core, not from the feet. If you feel your tailbones lightly lifting up off the floor, that means you're pressing through your feet. So try to scoop without lifting. See how much can you feel that pelvis tilt forward on the inhale? How much can you feel that belly drawing into the spine, pressing the spine and pulling that tailbone into a scoop without lifting? After a few more of these, on the exhale, we're going to start to press into our feet. Want to have a nice tripod feet. So 3 points of contact, heel, ball of the big toe, and ball of the pinky toe. As you exhale, scoop, continue to scoop, and peel your sacrum off the floor. We're going to see if you can peel each vertebrae one at a time, moving up the spine. I'm still scooping, so I'm pressing through the floor, reaching with the tailbone like I'm trying to scoop that tailbone up towards the ceiling till we feel a nice stretch at the top. And then we're going to see if we can place each vertebrae one at a time back to the floor till we get all the way down to the sacrum. Then filling up that belly, letting it open up, big sway in the back. Exhale as we scoop, drawing navel in and peeling the pelvis off the floor until we get into that full hip bridge. Going back and forth, nice inhale, opening up the belly, exhale, drawing navel into spine as you scoop. As you get to this top point, continue to scoop. The more you are able to scoop, reaching from that tailbone, you should notice that your core lights up on fire. What I want to avoid is as we get to the top, losing our scoop and allowing our rib to open up and reach towards the ceiling. That's taking us out of that engaged core. On the next one, as we get into our full hip drive position, we're going to take a few breaths from this space. Filling up the belly, we're allowing the pelvis to tilt forward. And then on the exhale, we're drawing navel to spine and we're re-engaging our scoop. So we're doing pelvic tilts from our drive. Inhale, pelvis tilts forward. This will get our rib to flare just a little bit. Exhale, scoop, draw navel into spine and notice that the rib flattens out. Try to keep your hips at the same level of elevation. Try not to let them drop. Nice inhale, exhale, scoop into it, feel that engagement of the glutes. And after a good 5 or 6 reps, we'll slowly drop our hips back to the floor. And I want to come back to our nice big C-shaped hands, placing them beneath the ribs, above the pelvis, squeezing into that midsection. and coming back to our balloon breath or our crocodile breath. Nice inhale, expanding out into all 6 points of contact. Exhale, allowing our hands to squeeze to create a little bit of resistance for our inhale. And really get a good sense. I want to develop that sensitivity to notice how well does that balloon expand evenly in all directions. Does it want to press more into your index fingers? Does it want to press more into your side palm? Does it want to go to the left side or to the right side more? Those are really important things to take notice of. And we'll get a good 10 nice big breath cycles. Full inhale, expanding out. Full exhale, drawing navel all the way into the spine. As soon as you exhale fully, filling right back up into that space on the inhale. Go ahead and allow your hands to drop to the side and see if you can maintain that breath cycle. Continue to breathe, feeling that expansion all the way out. Full balloon breath, 360 degrees. Exhale, full contraction of that belly to spine, full expiration of that breath. And then allow your body to soften and relax. And just take some nice soothing breaths. Allow that breath to move up into your ribs, up into the chest, up into the shoulders, and up into the neck. Filling up any areas that might feel tense or dense and restricted. And on the exhale, allowing that tension to relax down to the floor. When you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and very slowly get up.